Well, greetings. Welcome to the Dividing Line from Phoenix, Arizona. Haven't been in the studio here in a number of weeks. It's good to be back. Beautiful weather here in Phoenix. If any of you are shivering where you are, it looks like it's going to be, what's that song that talks about the palm trees swaying and stuff like that on Christmas Eve. I forget what the name of that one is, but yeah, that's where we're going to be. I think it's like 74 for Christmas Eve, and then a whopping. Let me see here. Let's see. Christmas is Wednesday. Yeah, so 71 on Christmas Eve, and a bone-chilling 66 on Christmas Day. 64 the day after. Low of 50.
It got down to 36 degrees at my house night before last. 36. It's just terrible.
Yeah. As I was explaining to you when we were buttoning up the RV yesterday, I let Rich sort of, pretend like he's doing cool stuff when we're packing up the RV, And, I had to go back and help him with the electric cord because, it has to be done. There really is, honestly, there's only one way to do that. You miss one thing on that. And I'm not going to work no more. Anyway, but yeah, you've got the sewer hose you're dealing with, and the hose. Remind me to order. I forgot to order more hoses. I've got the little ones coming today, but I need the one we threw out because those things, they wear out.
Yeah, just make sure you order hoses, not horses.
Yes, well,
I don't need to pull it with horses.
I generally don't think Amazon delivers horses with Prime, but anyway, so I was showing them, letting them do some stuff, and then I said, now, imagine doing what you're doing right now, but it's 25 degrees with wind chill. And that's what I had going back east, was like 25 degrees with wind chill. Now, I don't know what we're going to do about this, given what you said today, but we have had a knife donated. I'm going to have Derek Melton just come on because he sent me a whole description. This is from a, I guess, globally known knife maker, moved here from Israel. And I can't even explain all this. I'm just going to have Derek come on, and we'll figure out how we're going to utilize this. But I need to bring it in lest I forget it someplace. Right? Yes?
Well, we'll probably have to go back to an auction.
Okay.
Doing the auction thing on it. It's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
So, just there's a technicality in it, and realized this morning, oops, and we can't do things that way. So
can't do things that way.
Do
unfortunately.
things differently.
Yeah. I mean, I have no earthly idea why, but somebody who got themselves elected came up with an idea, and that's sort of how it works. Yeah. So you remember earlier this year, we did have some items that we people helped us to raise funds for the RV, and given the list of things we came back with on this last trip, I need to do that again. I lost my water pump, and I lost the furnace. Thankfully, it was right toward the end of the trip, and it probably is, it's probably the original water pump. Those things get beat up all the time, and probably just the heater strip on the furnace. So it's no major league big deal. But some of you may remember, and I'm not sure where Rich went, but he walked off right when I was going to be. There he is. But some of you remember that during the fundraising, there was a particular item that was very much liked by the person pushing the buttons today, and so I wanted to on the program today, I wanted to give Rich his Christmas present so you all could see it, and so you all get to see it, and I don't have to wrap it this way, which I used to be pretty good at wrapping. I'm not all that good at it anymore. I let the wife do it. But yeah, after I saw the response, I contrived with Derek Melton, and you will see that the sheath has RP on it.
No way.
And this
oh
is
my goodness.
This is the Derek Melton handmade. And as far as I can tell, this one looks a tad bit more coppery as far as the Damascus steel goes. But other than that, it is identical to the one that we auctioned off. But this one has Rich's name on it, so I guess he's stuck with it. So
I love it. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you,
Derek.
Tried really, really hard. And in fact, it just told me, I mean, if you want to get it, the door does open. It's okay. I don't need to keep it in here. But he tried very hard to not allow me to pay for this thing. And I'm like, dude, if I don't give you money for it, then it's from you, not from me. And so it's not my Christmas gift, it's your Christmas gift. And so it's sort of both of ours, because he certainly wouldn't allow me to do what the knife actually would have cost. So I guess you can split the difference or something. But so Rich has
that's all I've got to say. Wow, that's thank you both. That's amazing.
You very much you were very impressed with the one that he provided to us,
very much so.
As far as he can tell, it's pretty much
I think the blade is a little bit darker.
Yeah, I think so.
Which I love.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's more copper going on here, which is significant, being that I am a native Arizonan, and so it's the copper state. So yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, we used to. Man, I have not heard Arizona called the copper state in forever.
Well, it's what our flag's all about. And
I know.
It's our
but
history.
Man, that I don't hear anything about Morenci and Miami, and
they're still down there doing what they do.
Yeah, I've driven by. Yeah, it's been years now. But anyways, well, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the rest of that kind of fun stuff. I wanted to make sure to get that done before I lose it or something like that. That's the problem when you're traveling in an RV. All right, so many things. I'm going to try to ignore Twitter for at least a few minutes, especially because I recognize many of you don't live there, and thankfully I don't either. And there's so many things going on, and Twitter can be a tool. Twitter can be fun. It's great to be able to communicate with people around the world instantaneously. But at the same time, given its nature, it can be so very disturbing and discouraging to see how people behave there and how people respond there. Some people respond well. A lot of people really, really, really do not. And last week, Jeff and Luke joined Twitter. They had been MIA for a long period of time. They may rue that decision, given the immediate type of stuff that's been sent their direction. I certainly have seen over the past couple of weeks some of the most amazing stuff that I ever thought I would see appearing on accounts written by people who self-identify as Christians. So I want to look at some of that stuff toward, after we get the program started, and recognizing that today is the 17th of December. Therefore, a week from tomorrow is Christmas Day. I do realize that some of you, you know, I'm not going to get into this year, into the Christmas stuff. I mean, you can go online. Yeah, you know what I discovered? Jeff mentioned Sunday night, in the middle of the sermon, he looked over toward me, which means you've got to stay awake. He always knows where you're sitting. There's this seat. There's this 2-person pew. It's not even attached to the wall. So if you sit forward on it, it will flip over on you. And that's just where I sat. And I just sort of adopted it when we moved there. And so he always knows where to look. And I also go up and, do some of the stuff up there. And then during the Lord's Supper, I stand on one side with the elements, things like that. So there's a reason to be up there. Anyway, he looks over at me and he asks where my Hebrews series is, the Hebrew sermons that I preached through the book of Hebrews at PRBC over many years. When I looked at the list, it said 80. I thought it was 85. There may have been some they didn't include. Anyways, he asked where it was, and I said, well, it's on Sermon Audio. And then I was sitting there, and I go, I wonder, because someone took the whole Holiness Code series, it was 35 sermons, and posted it on YouTube as a playlist. And the thought crossed my mind, did someone do that with the Hebrews series, I wonder? I've not seen. Jumped on, looked, and lo and behold, there's 80 sermons, a playlist of 80 sermons on the Hebrews series. It's on YouTube. So, if you've ever been looking for that, some people say, I want something to listen to, that's goes in depth on biblical topics. Well, an 80 sermon series on Hebrews might fill your need, and that's available on YouTube as well. Anyway, so before we look at some of the stuff that is just truly astonishing in social media, it is a week from tomorrow. I think the thing that got me thinking about YouTube was the fact that I know I have found on YouTube my discussion of the dating of the book of Hebrews, of the book of Hebrews. Well, that's on there too, of Christmas, and the discussion of all the different historical issues and stuff like that, and how much of the stuff that you're going to be hearing from social media and stuff like that is just so completely inaccurate and out to lunch and stuff like that. So, and I know some, I know some Reformed folks here locally that are just absolutely death on Christmas. You're not allowed to say the word. I think for some of these guys, if you wore red and green accidentally, they'd tie you to a stake. I really think so. So we don't want that to happen. So we're not getting into all that. So if you're one of the Puritans, just tune out for a little while. We'll move on with other things. But when I think of next week, and I'm not sure what the program schedules, maybe we can get a program in on like Monday or something like that. I realize people are going to be very, very busy with other things. When I think of, especially the situation we're facing right now, and how things have changed so much just over the past few years in thinking about the role of Christ, the Incarnation, the whole idea of peace on earth, goodwill toward men who receive God's grace, depending on, I suppose that maybe that's something we will look at, because I've had a bunch of people ask me about the Luke 2:14 textual variant on Twitter, and the difference between the King James, the New King James, and the modern translations, the difference between the genitive and the nominative. It's a very minor variant, one letter, basically. And maybe we'll do that before, if we do a program next week, we'll dive into that one. We'll see. Anyway, just so much has changed when you talk about Christ as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, so much is happening with the Christian nationalist movements and everything else that there's a whole different tenor of things. It seems to me in thinking about Christ's lordship and what the incarnation means. And it just strikes me, one of the distinctions between Eastern Christianity and Western Christianity, we in the West, we think very legally, forensically, logically, supposed to anyways. Used to teach logic and things like that in school. That's been abandoned in the place and been replaced by emotionalism. Don't hurt my feelings, this kind of stuff. And the West then, as a result, focuses especially upon the cross and resurrection. The East, being much less forensic, logical, and much more mystical, much more liturgical, summarizing its theology in its prayers and its liturgy, rather than in concise statements of theology. The East has an emphasis on the incarnation. As you probably know, Eastern Orthodoxy, the Eastern churches celebrate the birth of Christ on January 6th, and the West on December 25th. And so how many days between December 25th and January 6th? 12, the 12 days of Christmas. So really, in a sense, historically, the 12 days of Christmas referred to the feast season, beginning with Christmas on the 25th and ending on January 6th. Now, if you want to use that as an excuse to keep your lights up through January 6th without feeling guilty, that's perfectly fine. But so there is a general agreement as to the season, even if there's a difference as to the specific day. But the East has an emphasis upon incarnation. And it's a good emphasis. It's sort of like when I was in Prior, I spoke on the subject of the atonement, and I talked about the various, and I hate this terminology, theories of atonement. Penal substitutionary atonement, the biblical perspective. But then there are others like Christus Victor. And there are elements of truth to the Christus Victor model. It speaks to true things. Christ is proclaimed victorious over his enemies, and there's you can't deny that captures part of the Scripture's teaching about the result of the death of Christ. And so when we're looking at this, we sort of see elements that are true, but they're just not complete in and of themselves. And you can't look at the incarnation without seeing the cross. And you can't look at the cross without looking at the resurrection. It is all one fabric. And the tendency of mankind is to get all imbalanced and emphasize one part of the fabric over another part of the fabric, whereas you can't do that. You do that and you end up shredding the fabric. But you do have those distinctions. And while we have in the West certainly a clear acknowledgement of the incarnation, let's just be honest. Most Western Christians, when you think of Christmas, incarnation is almost it's not even the terminology we're thinking of. The baby in that manger is very non-threatening. And the old hymns, the old Christmas hymns, and Samuel say it was, has been trying to find ways of getting us to be disappointed in him recently by posting all sorts of unpopular stuff. And one of the things he said was there aren't any theologically rich Christmas hymns. Well, there most certainly are. In fact, the most theologically rich hymns I've ever heard of were Christmas hymns. Lo, he abhors not the virgin's womb, God of God, light of light. I mean, there's just deep incarnational theology in a number of hymns. Now, there are also all sorts of Christmas songs that are downright heretical. They really are. Little Lord Jesus, no crying he makes. No, he cried, for crying out loud. He was a human baby. Human babies cry. That's not the result of the fall. And then there's another one about how white he was. It's just like, oh, okay, all right. So there's stuff that's significantly less than overly orthodox. Thankfully, a lot of that stuff ends up in this third stanza. And the loneliest place in the world is to be the third stanza of any hymn in a Baptist church. You could put the nuclear codes in the third hymn of a hymn at a Baptist church, and no one ever find them because ain't gonna get sung, ain't gonna happen. Now, of course, at PRBC we would sing every single verse. If there were 7 of them, you'd still slowly. Yeah, Rich is going, yep, I remember that.
And don't forget the
Amen. Yes, yeah, and it, as Melvin Matwire said long ago, I wonder if Brother Melvin's still around anywhere. As Melvin Matwire said many years ago, when you sing the Amen, you're saying it is true. It's not just how the hymn dies. and it's true. You got to admit, if you're going to do the Amen, you need to know how to sing not in unison, but in parts, so it sounds right. Otherwise, it's just sort of like it's how the hymn dies type thing. How did we get onto that? I don't know. Anyways, I was talking about Samuel Say and his bad take on Christmas hymns. Yes, there's great stuff, but most Western Christians don't follow the connection through from incarnation to the cross. And I've told the story. I've actually found it online somewhere, but not the actual recording that we did, but it is on YouTube someplace. But it's been a few years since I told the story. We would do big Christmas pageants at North Phoenix Baptist Church when I was a member there many years ago. This was in the Richard Jackson days. 20,000 members. Couldn't find more than 7,000 at a time, but 20,000 members. Huge church. I'm very thankful for the time I had there. That's where I met the guy over there. I won't tell you what he was like when we first met, but the Lord sanctifies us all, and do you still have your slime thing? No, you don't? Oh, come on. You don't know what happened. I thought it was stuck in your the case for your triple combination and I think it is. I've seen it. I think it's in that room in there. We're going to go look after the program. Anyway, there are a lot of things at North Phoenix that, I did leave, but there were a lot of really positive things that took place. We met all sorts of folks. Alan Willis tried to come to St. Charles, but the flu hit them, and I wanted to get him to get a chance to meet to see Kelly again because they had worked together for years there at NPBC. Anyway, we would do big Christmas stuff there. We really would. And I think one year they had horses, if I recall correctly. They were trying to compete with Phoenix First Assembly, which is now the Dream Church or something? Dream City. Okay. Yeah, because they built a worship center a little bit larger than North Phoenix's. And that was, I actually went with the staff up there, with Steve Seelig and a bunch of those guys. We all went up there one day to check out the place. And it was scary to me. It was so steep that, me being afraid of heights, I wouldn't have wanted to sit in the balcony. It was just like, yeah, no, thank you. But, oh, really? Oh, I had no idea. Well, anyway, I ran sound at North Phoenix Baptist Church. Not the entire time I was there, but for a good portion of it. And running sound, when you have a 250-voice choir, full orchestra, soloists, and props and actors, and it's a lot of work. You ought to run up to the sound guy on Sunday and give him a big old hug, because most of the time that's the most thankless job on the planet. It truly, truly is. And this one year we had a black singer named Ruby. Ruby Brown, and she could belt it out. I mean, she had quite the voice. It was beautiful. And I think if you look up North Phoenix Baptist Church and Ruby Brown, there are a couple of songs, including her, on YouTube. But this song was called The Shadow of the Cross. And thankfully, the one thing I did not do at North Phoenix Baptist Church was ever go up in the loft where the lights were. I could not do that. No, not possible. But we took one of the lights and we did a cutout in front of, well, it would have to have been before the lens. Yeah, something. We did something that turned the light red and in the form of a cross. And then aimed that at the manger scene, where the manger was. And so when Ruby Brown was singing The Shadow of the Cross, this light came on and you have this red cross falling over the manger scene where Jesus is. Now, I mentioned last year that in all probability, Jesus was not born in a manger in the sense of a cattle shed someplace. I know it's in all the hymns and all the rest of that stuff, but it was probably actually the portion of the house, which was common in those days, where the animals were sheltered and kept. So it was still in the house. It just wasn't where most of the humans were, because it was already filled up. So that's probably what it was. And that ruins a whole lot of Christmas carols. But anyway, it was beautifully done. And the message, really, in a sense, was the way to bridge the gap between East and West, if you can imagine that. As long as you keep in mind, when you're looking at the manger, when you're looking at the Incarnation, that Incarnation takes place in the shadow of the cross. At the same time, that also tells you the one who is on the cross was the one who was incarnate, was the Word made flesh. There's so many errors on all sides, because people refuse to allow everything the Scripture has to say about who Jesus was, the eternal purpose of God, the Incarnation, Jesus' own teaching. It's necessary that I go to Jerusalem. This wasn't some backup plan. This wasn't plan B. I remember very clearly as a young person, the dispensationalism in the churches that I was a part of, the teaching was that the kingdom was first offered to the Jews. And once they rejected it, then the cross took place. But that it was not God's eternal purpose. And, I guess there might still be some people who teach that. I don't know. I don't invest my time in anti-dispensational rhetoric and stuff like that. But I do remember that. And that would be something that I'd just have to go, that's way, 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 way off and way, way, way out there. So, but this it puts it all, it brings it all together. Shadow of the Cross. Look it up sometime. I didn't track it down to play any of it, but look it up sometime. And as you're thinking about, as you're, maybe you have the opportunity of leading devotionals to your family, things like that, over the next few weeks, keep that in mind. That the danger on the one side is to turn Jesus into a moral teacher, rather than he came specifically to give his life. And on the other side, just the sweet little baby, who can be offended by a baby? Well, that baby is the one who will judge the world in righteousness, according to Acts 17:31. And the grave sin that we see in the world today, the murder of unborn children, the perversion of marriage, the perversion of sexuality, the just open rebellion against God will be judged by the righteous one. And his incarnation makes him the perfect person to be the perfect judge. He lived a perfect life. He obeyed the Father in all things. And so he is the one who's going to judge. And so that baby, might not seem offensive sitting there in the manger, but he didn't stay in the manger. And as a result, he will stand as judge. So anyway, let's go ahead. What I wanted to do, there is a someone just put a picture of Elizabeth Warren up in Indian dress. Yeah, I don't. It's amazing. Again, the comments that are made in social media, I guess most people are not at all embarrassed when they break into a topic and post something completely different than what you were actually talking about. I guess they're, irrationality is not something that people are embarrassed by anymore. And so this morning I was, for example, there's a guy named Enior Jimenez, Enior. And he commented on something that I said again. He said, "You would have blocked Martin Luther most likely." And then he provides this long citation. And the long citation is from Luther's book, The Jews and Their Lies, 1543. And I again remember, I think back to our trip in 2017 to Germany. And I think about when we sat in the church in Erfurt. No, Eisleben. Luther was born there, but didn't live there. And he died there, but didn't live there. That happens to be where he had the final heart attacks that killed him. But I sat, there weren't sound systems back then. So you had to get up above the people so that the sound could carry down to them and could be heard in the back of the building and things like that. So pulpits were raised, and there would be a stairway, normally a curving stairway, to go up to the pulpit. And so I was sitting there, and the pulpit's right here. There's another one up here where somebody was speaking. I forget exactly what the context was. But I was actually looking at the last sermons that Luther preached there in that room. And they were just it was saddening. Very, very saddening. Because I was well aware of the fact, and I have recommended this to people. I've posted it many times. I gave a presentation in just a few weeks after that in Washington, D.C., on the two Luthers, the pre-1525 Luther and the post-1525 Luther. And I talked about what the reasons were, the peasants' revolt, and 100,000 people were killed, and he sided with the princes, and he was very afraid of anarchy. And the Luther prior to 1525 was a hunted heretic. The Luther post 1525 was very much connected to government and to the structures of power, and became rather curmudgeonly, a curmudgeon, to be honest with you, in the last 20 years of his life. And it's not like he was a completely different person. Obviously, there's lots of consistencies, but he had early on written a book that Jesus was a Jew, which might make us all go, that was controversial. Yeah, in that day. Remember, at this point in time, we're already past the horrific crusades against Jews, and when the Black Plague, Great Mortality, hit in the 14th century. In more than one place, the Jews were blamed. They'd be herded into wooden buildings, the doors locked, and then the building burned down to try to keep the plague from spreading, because they thought it was the Jews that were poisoning the water or things like that. And, the early Crusades, the very first crusade, the people headed out early, and as they're crossing Germany, they're ransacking Jewish villages and communities, and because, hey, the infidel's the infidel, right? Doesn't matter if it's Muslim or Jew, chop their heads off. Why not? And it's not that there weren't Christians who tried to stop that. There were. But it was dangerous. It was dangerous to do that because you're protecting the infidel. It's sort of like having, if you're a Muslim attorney in a Muslim country today trying to defend a Christian who's being accused of having burned the Quran or blasphemed Muhammad or something like that, there are a few that will risk themselves to do that, but not many. So anyways, by the time you get to the time of the Reformation, there is a long history, including straight out of the papacy, of just amazing assertions about the Jews and the blood libel, and that they take Christian children and they make matzah out of the blood of Christian children and all this kind of stuff like that. And so for Luther initially to say Jesus was a Jew, and we should seek to evangelize the Jews and to attract the Jews with the gospel message of Christ and things like that, that was radical. And it's heartbreaking that after 1525, Luther's attitude begins to change. People say it was because the Jews rejected his seeking to convert them and stuff like that. Maybe so, but in reality, Luther's greatest enemy throughout his entire life was Johann Eck. Eck had recognized who Luther was from the start, and he knew he was going to be a problem from the start. So, Johann Eck, in that time period, especially in Germany, was without a doubt the greatest promoter of anti-Jewish hatred. He wrote a massive tome, and it's just vile. I mean, it's just attacking the Jews, and it's almost as if Luther was trying to keep up with him when he wrote The Jews and Their Lies toward the end of his life. And yes, it's a blight on Luther's reputation. And when someone says you probably would have blocked him, look, that's that's obviously an absurd context to even raise it. If Luther lived today, would much has happened since then, and I would like to believe that the reformers themselves would be able to learn and to grow. I would hope that there has been growth and a deeper understanding of certain things since that period of time. So it's not fair to move someone into that context. But yes, I am seeing, I've lost track now of how many times I've seen the cover of Luther's book, The Jews and Their Lies, posted on Twitter. I've seen that more often in the past 2 months than in the entire time I've been on Twitter, and I think I got on Twitter in 2009 or 10. I forget which one it was. May have been earlier than that. I don't know. I suppose I could click on myself and find out, because it normally tells you. So it is so sad to me. Let me see here. Yeah, 2009, July of 2009. So, wow, over 15 years now. It's truly sad to have to say this, but you see people, and they don't know what the background is, and they don't care. They don't know anything about Luther's life. They're not reading church history. They've just discovered that Luther said this stuff, and that's where the Nazis got all the Luther quotes from. Well, it is where the Nazis got all the Luther quotes from. It's true. So why are you digging it up? Well, I'm not a Nazi, but, they were the last people defending Western civilization. But I'm not a Nazi. Okay, all right. So, just one of the many things that is so deeply disappointing about the stuff that we're seeing online these days. So, there was a fellow, and I almost hesitate to even mention stuff like this, because this particular guy that I'm about to talk about has 35 followers. You say, well, you shouldn't put people down for not having lots of followers. The point is, he's not invested. And people just got so angry at me years ago when I saw somebody else say, one of the ways to have peace on Twitter is to not to respond to anyone who has less than 500 followers. Why? Because if you've got more than 500 followers, you're invested in, well, first of all, people know who you are. They know where you're coming from, things like that. And in my experience, most of the food fights have come from those people that had no investment, had no real long-term presence in the platform and stuff like that. So anyway, I had responded to this Enyor guy. And so this guy popped in. A couple of people popped in. So someone else is called binary conditional or something like that. What's this here? Binary condition. Yeah. Binary condition had responded to what I had said about bondage to the will and Luther and stuff like that. As usual, you dodge the issues raised with ad hominem, and at the very men who follow you no less. You're chopping yourself off at the knees, that fancy revolver of yours. Why? This is something I want to get to, because there's a guy that I wanted to respond to. I'll try to get to it in here in a second. But this is a narrative. It's a lie that is being repeated so many times that it's stunning and disappointing to me how many people are willing to believe these lies. But since it's repeated over and over again, I'm like, dodge the issues? What issue specifically? And whenever I say get specific, they don't get specific. They either go silent or just start doing the ad hominem thing or whatever. But I had just responded to someone who has quoted from Luther's Jews and Their Lies. And it's like, well, you dodge the issues. That is the issue. That is the issue. We're talking about the rise of Jewish hatred amongst Reformed people. It doesn't matter if it's Anons or not. I mean, that's relevant, especially when anonymous people behave like fourth graders. That becomes relevant. Yeah. But there are people who we know who they are that are acting like fourth graders too. Now, they tend to use the other people to do their dirty work. That's where the issue, that's what the problem is. Doug Wilson wrote a long article, posted it yesterday, Blog and Mablog, talking about the Anons. He draws the necessary distinctions. It says it's not, all this stuff. I'll go ahead and address it. All this stuff has nothing to do with anonymous people on Twitter. As far as just, there have been people on Twitter that have had anonymous accounts for a long, long time. In fact, I had someone so dull as to say, well, you're an anonymous person. Okay. Really? There isn't anybody on Twitter that doesn't know how. I mean, my bio, I have it absolutely maxed out. I can't put anything more in my bio because I've got my grandkids' names in it. And I'm going to have to change that because, well, she's already announced it, but my daughter is expecting again. So who knows? But everybody knows who I am. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not an anonymous account. The issue is people professing to be Christians on Twitter who do not identify themselves, and the reason they do not identify themselves is so they can say things that would get them in trouble, not just with their employers, but with their church. They want to be in the church, but to hold views that would be censured by the church of necessity. And I'm not talking about, people always say, well, you're just saying that no one should question the post-war consensus, as if you're even using it the way that Reno did. You're not. You're hiding behind post-war consensus as if it's some big blanket shield to hide the fact that you're just glomming onto everything you can hold on to talk about the Jewish cabal, and a lot of it ends up with all sorts of other ethnic animus as well. I don't want a Hindu doctor. I don't want, you get to the Stone Choir people and to the Andrew Torba people, and, Lily White America is what everybody is talking about. And there's a huge spectrum there as well. The anonymity is to avoid responsibility. That's what the problem with that is. There's nothing wrong with having an anonymous account on Twitter as long as you're not using it as a shield to hide behind to promote all sorts of nastiness that will divide the body and end evangelism and fundamentally poison the gospel in our day. So that's what the issue's all been about, is people going, we need to have an army of Anons to mock Owen Strachan off of Twitter. That's what Joel Webbin said. Let's just get these people and we'll use mockery, and we're going to defend mockery and all the rest of this stuff. And again, Doug addressed that. Is there biblical mockery? Yeah, if you're a prophet of God in the Old Testament and you're about to kill all the prophets of Baal, there is biblical mockery at that point in time. But the vast majority of uses of mockery in the New Testament are not things that a Christian pastor would ever be encouraging anybody to engage in. But you see, there is a difference between encouraging anonymous people who, I don't know if they're a member of a church or not, to do and what you would encourage people who are openly identified as being a part of a church would do. So a guy by the name of Bill Becknell, Saint of Santa Fe, at Saint of Santa Fe. Again, 35 followers last I looked. Commented on what I had said. Enslavement to Zionism is a strange thing. It seems to warp the minds of formerly solid men like James White and Douglas Wilson. Now look, if you think we've changed, you're the one that's changed. And the advantage we have is 40 years of ministry to prove it, and all the recordings to go with it. We have a transcripts page on our website. Everything I've said on this program to 1998, debates, sermons, dividing lines, to 1998. Most of you weren't born then. Fully searchable, digitally. We haven't changed. So when people are saying, well, you're the ones that led us here, but no, we didn't. That's just, I don't know where you're coming up with this stuff, but you're deceived. You're deceiving yourself. I think the reason you're deceiving yourself, it's how you soothe your conscience for the fact that you realize you are nursing animus toward people groups. You really are, and you know it. And it comes out in what you say. So Zionism warps the mind. Zionism? What are you talking about? Well, I've had people saying he's sold out for Israel. What are you talking about? Again, prove it. Prove it. Where have I said that? I've said that I do not believe the modern state of Israel is fulfillment of biblical prophecy at all. I've never said that it was. So, what are you talking about? Where have I said we need to unconditionally support the nation of Israel? Look, in comparison to most of what's around it, Israel, it's better to have Israel than the current Al-Qaeda leadership of the new Syria, because they're going to be killing Christians right, left, and center. There are a lot of advantages to the secular state of Israel in that area, but it's a secular state. It's not the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. I don't believe that. So to call me a Zionist, I mean, the vast majority of the Jews in Israel are secular. They're not even religious. I mean, every kind of Judaism is expressed in Israel, obviously. And so you've got your Orthodox, you've got your, ultra-Orthodox, and you've got people who actually know what's in the Talmud and stuff like that. But they're a very small percentage. The vast majority of Jews are secular. They're not really practicing Judaism in any meaningful sense of that term. And so, back, was it October 7th of 22? 23? Yeah, 23. I sat right here and I went, something doesn't smell right here. This doesn't make any sense. The most secure borders and, look what they did with those pagers. I mean, how can you have that level of infiltration of your enemies around you, and this whole thing just happens? I still have serious questions. I have serious questions about how all of that happened, because look at what has happened since then. I have serious questions about that. That doesn't make me anti-Jewish. It doesn't make me anti-anything. It just makes me go, this doesn't really make any sense. Well, that's all we're doing. We're just asking questions. No, you're not. Stop lying to me and to yourself. Because every time someone raises anything like this, read the comments. Read the comments. Out they come. From the woodwork they come. And the anti-Jewish, ethnic animus, once a Jew, always a Jew, the Jews are behind everything. It's everywhere. It just explodes all over those. How come? Why would that happen? Why would that happen? I mean, the examples of them recently are a lot. Many of them. In fact, there was one. It was the taking a second to load up here. This poor computer got taken. Oh, great! It got unlinked too. I won't be able to bring it up. It was the Mel Gibson thing that Eric Kahn posted. Take the time to look at it. If you're interested, take time to look. Go to Eric Kahn's feed. Find the Mel Gibson thing where it's talking about Judeo-Christian, okay? In my old days, that was just a overarching term to refer to the fact that the Christian scriptures have the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the ethical and moral system comes from all of that. Well, now it's like, oh no, I'll take the Christian but hold the Judeo part. See? So it's like, okay. He posted that, and I just invite you to read the comments. It did exactly what he wanted to do. Lots and lots and lots and lots of comments. 98% of them are not Christian comments. They are. You just. It's like throwing. Did you see the picture of the guy? There were cops standing around, so they were ones that did it. But they were going to start a bonfire at a school event recently, and you see this. I think it was a cop. Walks up. They've piled all this wood up. He throws a flare in to light it up. The resultant explosion was very impressive. And that's what it was. Is obviously they put way too much fuel into the bonfire, and each one of these tweets is a lighted flare, and the result is stuff flying for 50 yards every which direction, and that's what's wanted. That's what you're trying to do. Oh yeah. I'll take the Christian, hold the Judeo. Yeah, there it is. How'd you do that? Oh, that's off your screen. That's not off mine. Okay. Yeah, look, Mel Gibson is a sedevacantist. He is more Catholic than the Pope. Remember when he put the Passion movie out, that the director's cut DVD included discussion with Mel Gibson and who? That would have been a great call-in quiz show question. Who did Mel Gibson have in studio to talk about the Passion of the Christ movie when they did the director's cut? And the answer is Jerry Matitix. Jerry Matitix. And some of you are going, don't have any idea. Well, that's understandable. Jerry Matitix was the first ordained PCA minister to ever convert to Roman Catholicism, and he is a sedevacantist. He used to be one of the primary figures of Catholic Answers, and then he went his own way. And the last time I saw Jerry, he was on Jeopardy. He was competing on Jeopardy. He didn't win, but he was competing on Jeopardy. So there you go. I've debated him like 13 times, I think. It's many times over the years on many Roman Catholic subjects. But the point is, he's as conservative as they come. He's far more Roman Catholic than Pope Francis is. And so there were a number of people one of the comments, as I recall, was, I'm looking forward to when you all affirm everything Mel has said. And Eric's response was, just hold on. And then somebody said, another comment was, when can we expect King's Hall, their webcast in Ogden, to join forces with Stone Choir? Now, that should have resulted in a massive denunciation. I didn't see any. Now, there's hundreds of comments, so stuff can get lost. But that's the kind of stuff that we're seeing online right now. And so when someone says to me, enslavement to Zionism is a strange thing, I just want to go, what color is the sky in your world? I do not believe that the nation of Israel is God's chosen people. I do not believe it's a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. It's one nation amongst many nations. It's primarily secular. It's heavily pro-homosexual. Tel Aviv especially. How am I a Zionist? Where is this even coming from? And so it really makes me wonder, because I see, again, they're Anons, primarily Anons, but so many of these people are like, oh, I used to listen to you all the time. I followed you all the time. Like, then why weren't you listening? Because I've never taught anyone to engage in ethnic hatred. In fact, if you had been listening, you would have had to have listened to years of my trying to prepare you to love and witness to Muslims. And man, I don't get the feeling the vast majority of these people would even give that a second thought. Didn't you catch that? Remember when I had Michael Brown on and we walked through Isaiah 53? Almost Hebrew word by Hebrew word? Why do that? Well, yeah, you can encourage believers that way, but primarily so that you can present that to Jewish people, because most of them haven't seen it. I can't tell you how many Jewish believers I have met that said, it was when I read Isaiah 53 for the first time. I remember going to my rabbi going, what is this? This sounds like Jesus. And it's like, yeah, because it is. So when people say, but you brought us here. Brought us to what? Well, you taught us to question stuff. Okay, that's true. Like I said, I have questions about what's going on in the Middle East right now. I have questions about a lot of things going on in the world right now, because I'm not really even sure what sources of information I can trust. We've got drones buzzing around our own nation. And to be honest with you, the only logical explanation that I can come up with is that it's not that it's aliens. It's not Iran. They're looking for a nuke. They're looking for a nuke. I had heard whispers for years of special equipment and forces in the United States meant to keep nuclear bombs, because a lot of them disappeared after the Soviet Union fell. It's just, let's just say the accounting system was not perfect. And there's been movies about it and stuff like that, sure. But the only thing that makes any sense to me at all, and there's a number of people that are confirming stuff like this. There was a nuclear regulatory agency that talked about missing radioactive stuff and blah, 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 blah. Something came through Newark. You know, if we're ever going to fall, it will come through Newark. That would make sense. But, you've got inauguration coming up. And drones, large drones with sensor arrays and stuff like that, makes perfect sense. Yeah, that we can, and there are certain signatures to plutonium, uranium, stuff like that are next to impossible to completely hide. And so they know what to look for. That's what I think's going on. They're not going to tell us that. They're going to let that slowly seep out. I've got questions about a lot of things. I don't know what sources of information necessarily to trust. So this isn't about that. It isn't about, having questions about 9/11. Now, it is, I will say this, and I've mentioned it before. I do see a lot of these people likewise grabbing hold of flat earthism. And did you see that stuff in Antarctic last week? Okay. I was blown away because having a brain freeze here. a good brother was tweeting about it, and he said, Will Duffy. And I went, Will Duffy? How many Will Duffys are there? And so I said, Will Duffy from Colorado? He said, yeah. And I'm like, oh, the open theist Will Duffy. And he's like, well, I don't know anything about his theology. That'd be bad. But evidently he arranged to test flat earthism by going to Antarctica and seeing if the sun set. If the sun just goes around you, you're on a globe. You're on a spinning globe. And I saw the video they produced. And they had a camera
I'm pretty sure that someone somewhere is going to say that was filmed in the same studio that the
moon landings were on. Yeah. I'm sure. There's always a way around it. But it was funny. It was hilarious to see that. And that's why I mentioned on the Dividing Line last week, Falling Flat, great book that you can get at Amazon or from Jason Lyle's ministry, that just devastates all this flat earth stuff. And I highly recommend that you get a copy because you never know. But again, I'll be honest with you. That just gives you an idea. Once you get to that point, and I've tried to talk to some of these folks, once they've accepted this overarching lens, they can do anything they want with the facts. There's no reasoning with them. There's no talking to them. You cannot reason with a flat earther. You can't. It's simply impossible. There's always an explanation for anything because you've already come to your conclusion. You're not looking at the facts. The facts just simply have to be made to fit your narrative. And it's the same thing with the nebulous Jews everywhere thing. If you go, yeah, but the head of that porn company over there is an Indian. It doesn't matter. The Jews are still in charge. I mentioned the wacky lady. First thing this morning, I see this House of Representatives member who is talking about the Marine, Penny, who was found not guilty. He was acquitted. Said that he had lynched this guy. And I'm like, what? The thought crosses my mind once in a while. What district elects these people? And I looked her up. It was Dallas, Texas. And again, every city, that's just sort of how it works. The big cities become blue messes, yes?
So before we get too far afield here,
I've been far afield the whole program.
Yeah. So you talk about you talk about the state of Israel, okay, and the Israel component here in their thinking. But there is a group that has learned that they can hide behind a distinction between ethnic Jews,
right,
and Talmudic Jews, and it's the Talmudic Jews that we're after. It's they believe this and they believe that. And I read this and it's like, okay, let's say everything that you're saying is true. Let's say it's 10 times worse than that. Number one, I don't see any of them, claiming that we can all become gods, and that God was once a man and lived on another planet. I don't see any of them saying that stuff. But what is our New Testament? They keep, the Old Testament this, and the preparatory prayers this, and I don't see any of them looking at Romans 12 going, our job here is to respond like this, not that. Instead, they want to keep ignoring that. And before I forget this, because we're getting at that age, and trust me, it gets worse as you go along here, young man.
You're not that much older.
You've already said it, I don't know how many times. The issue at hand is not about anonymous handles on Twitter.
No.
It is about a small group of people marshaling a bunch of anonymous followers into a task of trying to subvert and to push away, all right, anybody, not just Owen Strahan, but anybody who dares to disagree with them, who dares to push back. And then when confronted on it, they leave the key part out, well, you're going after the Anons. Not going after the Anons. We're going after people who deceive the Anons into doing their bidding, and then when this all blows up into something completely else that it never was, they sit back and they go, oh, what'd we do? We didn't do nothing. Nothing to see here. Mm. No, you are out there stirring the pot. You're using deception of all kinds, very subtle subterfuge, in order to play these little mind games with all kinds of people, in order to somehow hide from what we all know you're saying, and we all know that you're trying to gin up and get more followers who have a agenda of hate. Hide behind Talmudic Judaism, hide behind ethnic Judaism, hide behind other ethnic groups all you want. The biblical mandate is clear, and you don't want to deal with it.
It's, the term has been used, platform building, and, we've been accused of it, and I'm like, what? First of all, we're really lousy at that, and secondly, we don't need to do it. We had a platform before anybody else had a platform. So I don't know. What do you mean platform building? I don't get that. But yes, people are trying to build platforms. Some people are trying to rebuild platforms they once had, having been disqualified from continuing to speak publicly. And then others are just young enough to be trying to build it. I wanted to get to this because this was the tweet that I had saved, and I had not recognized the connection. But that guy that I mentioned earlier, Binary Condition, was the guy that I had bookmarked. And he had said, he is attacking us who follow those who came before him, led to them by him. He's referring to me. I hate that I am forced in this situation. I loved, capital Loved, James White. I loved Wilson. But they are shooting us in the back as we continue on the very path that they laid out for us in the pursuit of truth. Okay, so here's the narrative. The narrative is being created. Notice there's no facts here. He is attacking us who follow those who came before him, led to them by him. What are you talking about? Who? The Luther stuff. I've talked about the Luther stuff forever. I've always made the distinctions I'm making now. People like Stone Choir, I've rejected that kind of racist drivel my entire life. They are shooting us in the back as we continue on the very path that they laid out for us in the pursuit of truth. What do you mean we laid out this path for you? What path? A path into thinking that the Jews are behind everything? A path toward white nationalism? Where did I ever lay anything like that out? Well, you said that we need to have borders. Yeah, we need to have borders. Any nation does. You can't have laws, and you can't have taxation, and you can't have anything that keeps a nation as a nation without borders. That has nothing to do with white borders. So what are you talking about? Show me. Prove it. Don't just go with the narrative. See, I don't even know if these people exist. I'll be honest with you. I mean, half these people, they may all be the same person with 25 different accounts. We've all seen the pictures of the rooms where there's 20 people sitting there and there are 500 phones. And they're all hooked together and they're all doing bot stuff all over social media. So it might just be the same guy. It might be someone said, look, we're going to create a narrative. And the narrative is that we want out from underneath the responsibility of the generations before us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say they're now out of touch. We're going to say they have boomer brain. We're going to say that they're been swept up with the post-war consensus. And so we're going to create this narrative and we're going to push it out on 100 different accounts. And it sounds like a bunch of people are saying the same thing, and that gives it credibility. Maybe that's how it's working. I don't know. But every time I push back on any individual one, you show me where I've done that. They run for the hills. They got nothing. because we've never done anything like that. We have remained consistent from the start. And when I say we, I can't speak for Doug, but I think he, given what he's written just only yesterday, would be saying the same thing. Don't blame us for going down the dark path you're on, because that's not the path we laid out. And you have to ignore the vast majority of what our teaching has always been from before you were born to come up with this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's extremely bothersome because it's just so untrue. It's just such a lie. And I'll just mention one other thing. I realize it's 3:16, but people keep bringing up Turretin fan. So there's a counterexample. You didn't do this about Turretin fan. You didn't do that, blah, 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 blah. And he's actually the perfect example. Here's someone, I know what his reasons were back then. I don't know that they're still the same reasons today, but I know why he was initially anonymous, because of his job, the situation he was in. I understood that. But here's somebody, this is so obvious. You could never have a bot do what Turretin fan has done on social media. I mean, I see this guy doing 2-hour-long programs on, and initially he didn't do anything with video because he had to be truly anonymous. Evidently, he doesn't have to be anymore on that level. But he'll do a 2-hour-long program on some of the most arcane points of dispute with Roman Catholicism, or the stuff he's done in response to King James onlyism and the TR only movement and Revelation 16:5 is like, bots can't do that. Okay? So here's someone doing serious, in-depth stuff, hours of research. These anonymous accounts are just simply repeating the talking points of all the other anonymous accounts. There's nothing new there. There's no research there. There's no anything like that at all. So, no, there is no parallel. And again, if you have an anonymous account because of the situation you're in life, great, fine, wonderful. But don't use it as a cover for sinful actions and expressions. If you can't, and man, I saw mockery. Again, this is now the mechanism of the we are departing from reformdom as quickly as we can, people, is mockery. Mockery, mockery, mockery. So some poor guy actually suggested, maybe, if you've got a problem in this area, you should let your pastor know what your account is so that they can help to keep you accountable. Wow, they came out of the woodwork. And again, it was all mockery, 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 mockery. I did not see a single person that was pushing back against that person had the slightest sense of pastoral responsibility. None. It was all mockery. That's what we're talking about. When you behave on social media in a way that would embarrass you if your pastor was standing over your shoulder while you're typing your tweets, that's what we're talking about. Right there. It's not just anonymity. It's anonymity as a cover. It's anonymity to allow you to engage in behavior that is degrading to the cross of Christ. That's what we're talking about. I see your finger.
Yeah.
Yes.
I walked into North Phoenix Baptist Church 42 years ago this month.
Oh, my goodness.
And from the time of being a new Christian, a new believer, to maybe 6 months ago, I have never, ever, ever been in the presence of a pastor or an elder who spoke in this manner in my presence. Whether it's from a sermon, whether it's from the pulpit, whether it's in a social setting, whether it's online, in any capacity. What you posted this morning from Eric Kahn, that meme alone, just that one, violates my conscience. for 42 years, I've never witnessed such a thing. And had I during any of that time, I would have been just as repulsed then as I am now. And the only thing I can imagine is that until the rest of us stand up, start sounding the alarm and telling them how incredibly repulsed we are, and that in my mind, it disqualifies from ministry these men. They have no business leading others. None. And it's absolutely outrageous to me. And again, as I said before, the New Testament instruction to the believer and how we are to behave is 180 degrees opposite from this. 180. I mean, you think about that day, James, when I lost my temper out in the witnessing field, and I did that go for it thing.
Go for it, buddy.
Okay. This is the anger, rage, and malice side of the human being that was being fleshed out of me that day. Okay? That's what I see online with these guys. They're filled with that attitude, and they're rejoicing in it.
Well, and they're being encouraged by others. The problem is the others are being used to encourage them. Here is a, and I can't get it much bigger than this. But here is a tweet from a guy named Reformed Patriot. It's at Tulip Patriot. And notice what it says. Christian Reformed Calvinist Twitter is arguing on No More Brother Wars, who recorded who, anons, overweight pastors, mean memes, which declaration do I sign today, etc. ad nauseum. The real question needs to be solved is the meme below accurate? That's the debate needed, not the effeminate deflection, wordsmithing, and wig powdering. And you'll notice what it is. It's Hitler and his individuals around him. They told you that we were monsters. We were the last warriors who fought the satanic Jewish banking cartel that rules you today. This is Reformed Patriot. And when I posted that, over here is Reformed Patriot's bio. Husband, father, pastor, Reformed 1689, post-mill, partial preterist, Grace, U.S. Constitution promoter, blues, 70s metal, blues guitarist, Trump. And of course, red avatar, blue eyes. So someone informed me that they had actually contacted him, and not overly shockingly, yes, my phone has been ringing, and the funny part is, now that I have hearing aids, it goes straight to my hearing aids, and so everything else gets blasted out of the way. This is not shocking, but I've been told that the church is closing down. That this man is pastoring, and he is looking for a new calling. I think any church needs to know what this man is posting anonymously on Twitter before they look at hiring him as a pastor. Don't you? Don't you think that did I just not turn that off? Oh, sorry about that. I thought I'd put it on silent. I think any church looking to hire someone as a pastor should be willing to say, could we look at your social media presence? Could we look at what you post about? That's a perfectly fair question to ask, especially these days. Big time. Absolutely big time. So, to all of those saying, you left us, we used to love you and all the rest of this stuff. Well, I don't know how much of that's real. There have been a few that I've actually had correspondence with. You totally bought into the whole thing. Yep. And the reality is you weren't listening to most of what I said. You were hearing me and you were filtering it through what your desires were. And, well, that fits with where I'm going. Oh, that's great. Blah, 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 blah. But there's not a one of you that's been able to demonstrate that what we have ever said in this ministry would lead you to Stone Choir, Andrew Torba style, non-regenerational, quote-unquote Christian nationalism. It doesn't work. Doesn't work. Now, I know there's other things. I had some other things I wanted to get to here. I have noticed that Jeff is definitely lighting the fire in Twitter. There's lots of people definitely going after him now that he's shown up there. There's some stuff from Turretin Fan I want to talk about. He sent me a message quite a while ago, and it's fascinating stuff about some New Testament stuff, correcting some of my errors, actually, that I wanted to address that I thought was really, really interesting. I'll try to remember to get to that. And there are a couple other things. We've got another program this week and one next week, so we should be able to get to that. But I'm noticing, I agree with all that stuff. I think you are giving James and Doug too much credit. I'll have to look at that one later. People interacting with some of those critics. But I just wanted to make sure that if you hear anybody saying, wow, he's changed so much, real simple. Real simple. One side is known. One side has, how many books have Doug Wilson, me, Joe Blute, Andrew Sandlin, how many books do we have out? And over how many decades were they written? It's really hard to change your footprint at that point. So think about it. You've got a bunch of anons. You don't know who they are, where they are, what they've done, anything else. And they're developing a narrative. And on the other side, you've got well-known people, decades of experience, books out there. And in our case, pretty much everything I've said from behind this microphone since 1998. And sometimes before then, when we've included, previous programs, stuff like that. Yeah, we've got stuff in the 80s. Fully searchable. Debates, sermons, church history teaching, apologetics teaching, dividing line, everything. It's all there. You would think if we have all of a sudden betrayed a trust and betrayed people that we were leading to the great promised land of whatever, it'd be real easy to prove. You don't. Because, I don't know how many Anon accounts there are. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm starting to think there's actually a pretty small amount of them. And they are just, using the bots to do it. That's one of the reasons they're anonymous. But there are others. This guy just mentioned that church is falling apart. Well, there's, if you're online posting this type of stuff, your church is going to fall apart. Because that's not the gospel. That's not what's needed now. So when you hear people saying that, just look at the facts. Who has standing? Who has the foundation? And judge from there. Nahum O'Brien, the top thing in my profile feed right now in Twitter is Nahum O'Brien, who bought a roll of Elf Christmas paper, wrapping paper. He says, every year for Christmas, as a joke, I try to find the most hideous wrapping paper for the presents to my wife. This is this year's winner, and it's a whole thing of Elf. I would love to find that wrapping paper. That would be, I'd use it for all the presents, but I'm not sure I'm going to be doing a whole lot of those presents anyways this year. So, yeah. All right. Probably have a lot of things going on. I bet you bunches of you have Christmas pageants and family celebrations. I know that I'm going to try either Friday or Saturday night or both, depending, I don't know, to get out to the Christmas lights presentation at the LDS Temple. I've never in all my years been out there. And my son-in-law Eric is heading it up. Pray for him. He has injured his back badly. And so we need to get him back and operational because, like I said, my daughter's pregnant. And so, dad's got to be around to help with stuff. So pray for him. But we're going to be trying to be out there with, witnessing to Mormons and others and talking about the gospel on Friday and Saturday nights of this week. And this coming Sunday, we do something unusual. Apologia Church, when it was very young, couldn't have Christmas services in the building that they were a part of. And so they started meeting at a local park. And so we have our Christmas service. It's the only Sunday in the year where we actually have to get up on Sunday morning. Because otherwise it's 4:00 in the afternoon. So you don't have to get up overly early on Sunday morning. But we will have our services in a park out in Mesa or Gilbert. I forget where it is. This coming Sunday. Always really enjoyable to do that. I get to wear my Coogee sweaters, and some of the other guys I've given Coogee sweaters to sort of feel guilty enough that they wear them. Rich never would. Rich would never experience that level of guilt. Not what? It is strange that I've never tried to guilt him by giving him a nice Coogee sweater. I haven't done it because I just don't want to, I just want to see the thing burned or turned into a necktie or, something like that. I think what he'd do is he'd use it to cover his chair in the office. That would probably be what would happen to it. But there are other brothers around the United States and the world that have received Coogee sweaters from me that receive them as gifts of love. And then I never saw him again. Okay. All right. Well, so like I said, I've got a few more things to get to, but we're going to do that on the next program on Thursday. Now, Thursday is going to be, I can't tell you, I have something starting at 11:30. It could probably go for as much as 3 hours, and I've got to drive back here. And then I've got to the Dividing Line, and then I'm dealing with Tony Costa. I'm going to be on his show, but it sounds like he has a firm time on that. So in other words, it's exactly, I think, 7:30 Eastern, which is 5:30 right now here, 2 hours right now. So I have to be done by 5. However, we're going to make that work out. So we're going to be squishing it in there. I'm not going to be able to go long like I have today next time around, but we'll see how it's going to work. So we'll see you next time on the Dividing Line. Thanks for watching. God bless.